The fluorescent lights of Heathrow Terminal 5 buzzed overhead like angry wasps as I stood at the British Airways counter, watching my carefully constructed life crumble into expensive pieces. The gate agent's sympathetic smile couldn't mask the uncomfortable truth she'd just delivered. My ticket to New York had been canceled 30 minutes ago, from my wife's phone. "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Kepler," she said, her voice carrying that practiced airline empathy. "The cancellation was processed while you were, well, while the original booker was dining at the gallery's first lounge upstairs. My wife Mara was upstairs, with him, canceling my ticket while probably feeding each other overpriced sushi and laughing about the poor bastard husband she'd left stranded downstairs, like yesterday's newspaper." "Let me get this straight," I said, keeping my voice level despite the rage building in my chest. "She canceled my ticket while having dinner with another man?" The agent's eyes flickered with recognition of a domestic drama she wanted no part of. "I can only confirm the timing and location of the cancellation request, sir." Julian Kepler, 38 years old, cybersecurity consultant, standing in one of the world's busiest airports with no phone, smashed against a wall during our screaming match an hour ago, no wallet, left in the taxi during my hasty exit, and apparently no wife worth the name. The fight had been brutal. 3 months of Mara's increasingly cold behavior, her late nights at the office, her dismissive comments about my boring career, had finally exploded when I'd confronted her about the hotel receipts I'd found in her coat pocket. She'd laughed, actually laughed. "You were always a safety net, Julian," she'd said, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against her Hermes bag. "Now you're off the wire." The metaphor was apt. I felt like I was falling. "Sir," the gate agent was looking at me with growing concern. "Is there someone you can call? Perhaps—" "No," I said. "No, there isn't." That's when I heard the voice behind me. Crisp, confident, with just a hint of amusement. "Excuse me, are you Julian Kepler?" I turned to see a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread about successful people who vacation in the Maldives. Tall, elegant, with dark hair pulled back in a way that suggested she had people who did that sort of thing for her. Her suit probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Do I know you?" I asked. She smiled, and something in her eyes suggested she was enjoying a private joke. "Aria Venton. We met briefly during the Morrison audit last year. You were the cybersecurity consultant who exposed their CFO's creative accounting." I remembered now. Aria Venton, heir to one of London's oldest real estate fortunes, had been on the Morrison board. She'd been the only one who'd seemed genuinely pleased when we'd uncovered the embezzlement. "Right," I said. "What are you doing here?" She glanced around the terminal, then stepped closer. "I need you to do something for me. Something that will benefit both of us." "I'm listening." "Stand next to me. Act like my husband." She looked sharp, calculating. "Your wife will regret this." Before I could respond, she was already moving, her hands sliding through my arm with practiced ease. "There are photographers here. Someone tipped them off about my travel plans, and I need to avoid questions about my personal life. You need to make your wife wonder what she's lost." I looked across the terminal and spotted them, two men with expensive cameras, trying to look casual near the departure boards. Paparazzi. "What's in it for me?" I asked. "Revenge," Arya said simply. "The kind that doesn't require you to lower yourself to her level." Something in her tone suggested she knew exactly what kind of evening I'd had. Something in her smile suggested she had plans that went beyond avoiding photographers. "And if I say no? Then you stand here alone, stranded, while your wife celebrates upstairs with her lover." Arya's grip on my arm tightened slightly. "Or you walk out of here with me and we give her something to really worry about." I looked back at the gate agent, who was pretending not to listen to our conversation. I looked up toward the lounge level, where Mara was probably toasting her freedom with whatever his name was. I looked at Aria Venton, who was offering me something I hadn't expected to find tonight. An opportunity. "What exactly did you have in mind?" I asked. Her smile widened. "Let's start with making sure those photographers get some very interesting pictures. Then we'll see how creative we can get." As we walked toward the exit, her arm still linked through mine, I caught a glimpse of Mara coming down the escalator from the lounge level. She was laughing at something her companion, tall, bland, expensive suit, was saying. Then she saw me. The laughter died. Her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, and then something that might have been panic as she took in the elegant woman beside me. The way we moved together like we belonged to each other. Arya must have felt me tense because she leaned closer and whispered, "Smile, Julian. This is where it gets interesting." I smiled, and for the first time in months, it felt genuine. Arya's Bentley was the kind of car that made other vehicles look apologetic for existing. As we pulled away from Heathrow, I caught a glimpse of Mara and her companion standing outside Terminal 5, looking like they'd just watched their vacation plans get canceled by an act of God. "She looks confused," Arya observed, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Good. Confusion is the first step toward panic." "You seem to know a lot about this," I said. "About panic or about revenge?" "Both." Arya navigated through London traffic with the kind of casual competence that suggested she'd been driving expensive cars through expensive neighborhoods her entire life. "My family has been in business for 4 generations. You learn things about human nature, about leverage, about timing. And what exactly are you planning to leverage here?" She pulled into the parking garage of a building in Mayfair that probably cost more per month than most people's annual salaries. "Your wife just made a very public mistake. Canceling your ticket, leaving you stranded. That's the kind of story that travels fast in certain circles." "What circles?" "The ones that matter to someone in private equity." Arya turned off the engine and looked at me directly. "Mara Solon has built her career on being seen as reliable, trustworthy, someone who honors her commitments. What does it say about her business judgment if she can't even manage her personal relationships without creating public scenes at international airports?" I was beginning to understand why Arya had approached me. This wasn't just about avoiding paparazzi. "You know her professionally. Our firms have competed for the same deals. She's cost me money." Arya's smile had an edge to it now. "I believe in returning favors." The elevator to her penthouse was the kind of smooth, silent ride that suggested money had been spent on things most people never thought about. The apartment itself was a study in understated wealth, the kind of place where every piece of furniture had a story and a price tag that would make mortgage brokers weep. "Drink?" she asked, moving to a bar that looked like it had been transplanted from a high-end hotel. "Whiskey, something that burns." She poured 2 glasses of something amber and expensive, handed me one, and settled into a chair that probably cost more than my car. "So," she said, "tell me about your wife." "Ex-wife, apparently." "Not yet. Legally, you're still married. That gives you certain advantages." I took a sip of the whiskey. It was smooth enough to be dangerous, such as joint accounts, shared assets, legal standing in her business affairs. Arya swirled her drink thoughtfully. "Tell me, Julian, what do you know about pre-signed authorization clauses?" "Enough. I've seen them in corporate contracts. Mara's firm uses them extensively, particularly for international transactions." Arya leaned forward slightly. "I'm willing to bet that in your marriage documents, your joint financial agreements, there are similar clauses, emergency provisions, things she insisted on for efficiency." She was right. Mara had been very particular about our financial arrangements, insisting on various clauses that would allow either spouse to act quickly in case of emergency, travel, or business requirements. At the time, it had seemed reasonable. Now, it seemed like ammunition. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that your wife has just created the perfect emergency situation. She's stranded you abroad, canceled your travel arrangements, and left you without access to your resources." Arya's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "That sounds like exactly the kind of situation those emergency clauses were designed to address." My phone buzzed. I'd managed to borrow one from Arya's assistant while we were in the car. 3 missed calls from Mara, 2 text messages. The texts were predictable. "Where are you? We need to talk." "She's worried," I said. "Good, let her worry." Arya stood and moved to the window, looking out over London's glittering skyline. "The question is, how worried do you want her to be?" "What did you have in mind?" "Tomorrow night there's a charity gala at the Dorchester, the kind of event where everyone who matters in London finance will be present." She turned back to me. "Mara will be there. So will her lover, I assume. And so will we. Together." Arya's expression was all business now. Let me ask you something, Julian. In your cybersecurity work, what's the most effective way to compromise a target? Social engineering. Make them want to give you access. Exactly. We're going to make Mara want to know what she's lost. We're going to make her wonder what you're capable of. We're going to make her doubt every assumption she's made about her boring, predictable husband. I thought about Mara's laugh when I'd confronted her about the hotel receipts, the casual cruelty in her voice when she dismissed our marriage as a safety net she no longer needed. What's your angle in all this? I asked. Beyond the professional satisfaction of watching a competitor squirm? Arya returned to her chair. Let's just say that Mara's firm is currently bidding on a project my family wants very badly. If her personal life becomes a liability, if her judgment appears compromised, it could affect her firm's credibility. You want to destroy her career? I want to win? The fact that it might destroy her career is simply a pleasant side effect. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Mara. Julian, please, let's talk about this like adults. I showed the message to Arya. Like adults, she repeated. Interesting choice of words from someone who just abandoned her husband at an international airport. So, what's the plan? Arya smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, it looked genuinely warm. The plan, Julian, is to give your wife exactly what she asked for. She wanted you off the wire? We're going to show her what happens when the safety net disappears completely. She raised her glass in a toast. To new partnerships. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling something shift inside me, something cold and calculating that I hadn't known existed. To new partnerships, I agreed, and to making Mara regret every single choice that had led to this moment. The next morning arrived with the kind of gray London drizzle that made everything look like a noir film. I woke up on Arya's guest room bed, Egyptian cotton sheets that probably cost more than my monthly salary, and for a moment forgot where I was. Then it all came rushing back. Mara, the airport, the cancellation, the alliance with a woman who collected revenge like other people collected art. My borrowed phone showed 17 missed calls from Mara and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. The progression was almost textbook. Anger, confusion, bargaining, and finally something that looked suspiciously like panic. Julian, this is ridiculous. Come home so we can discuss this properly. I don't know what game you're playing, but it needs to stop. People are asking questions. This is affecting my work. Please call me. We can work this out. The last message, sent at 3:17 a.m., was just, I'm sorry. Too little, too late. Arya was already dressed and working on her laptop when I found her in the kitchen. She looked up from what appeared to be financial documents and smiled. Sleep well? Better than I have in months. It was true. For the first time in a long time, I'd slept without the knot of anxiety in my stomach that had become my constant companion. Good. We have work to do. She gestured to the documents spread across her granite countertop. I've been researching your wife's firm. Interesting reading. I poured myself coffee from a machine that probably cost more than some people's cars and looked over her shoulder. The documents were detailed financial reports, client lists, and what appeared to be internal memos from Mara's company. How did you get these? Publicly available information, mostly. Amazing what you can piece together when you know where to look. Arya pointed to a highlighted section. Your wife's been busy. 3 major deals in the past 6 months, all requiring extensive travel, all with the same co-lead. Let me guess. Tall, bland, expensive suit? Lucas Brandt, 42, divorced, drives a Range Rover that costs more than most people's houses. Arya's smile had that sharp edge again. Also, currently under review by his firm's ethics committee for some questionable expense reports. Questionable how? Hotel rooms booked for business trips that never appeared on any client billing. Restaurant charges for client entertainment on days when no clients were scheduled. She closed the laptop. Your wife has expensive taste in affair partners. My phone rang. Mara again. Answer it, Arya said, but put it on speaker. I hesitated, then swiped to accept the call. Julian, thank God. Mara's voice sounded strained, tired. Where are you? I've been calling all night. I'm fine, I said, keeping my voice neutral. You're fine? Julian, you disappeared from Heathrow with some woman. People are talking. There are pictures. Pictures? Someone posted photos on social media. You and some brunette leaving the airport together. Who is she? I looked at Arya, who was grinning like she'd just won the lottery. A friend, I said. A friend? Julian, you don't have friends like that. She was wearing a suit that cost more than our mortgage payment. Maybe you don't know me as well as you thought. There was a long pause. When Mara spoke again, her voice had that carefully controlled tone she used in difficult business negotiations. Julian, I know you're upset about last night. I know canceling your ticket was harsh, but we can work through this. Come home and we'll talk. About what? About Lucas? About the hotel receipts? About how I'm just a safety net you don't need anymore? Another pause, longer this time. You don't understand the situation, she said finally. Then explain it to me. Not over the phone. Come home. I don't think so. Julian, I hung up. Arya was looking at me with something like approval. Well done. You've just made her more desperate. She sounded scared. She should be. Do you know what happens when private equity partners start making headlines for personal drama? They lose clients. They lose everything. Reputation is currency in that business. Trust is everything. Arya stood and moved to the window. Your wife has built her career on being seen as stable, reliable, someone who makes good decisions under pressure. What does it say about her judgment if she's having public meltdowns at international airports? But she's not having public meltdowns. I am. Are you? From where I stand, you're handling this with remarkable composure. You've found alternative arrangements. You're maintaining your dignity, and you're not making scenes. Arya turned back to me. She's the one making frantic phone calls, sending desperate text messages, and worrying about what people will think. My phone buzzed with another text. This time, it wasn't from Mara. Who's that? Arya asked. I looked at the message. Someone named Clara. Says she's Mara's friend and wants to meet. Clara Hendricks, Mara's lawyer and closest confidant. Arya's expression grew thoughtful. This is interesting. If Clara's reaching out, it means Mara's more worried than she's letting on. Should I meet with her? Absolutely, but not alone. Arya was already reaching for her phone. I think it's time we started making some moves of our own. Such as those emergency financial clauses we discussed. I think it's time to activate them. Arya's smile was predatory now. After all, you've been abandoned abroad by your spouse. That sounds like an emergency to me. As she made her call, I looked out at the London skyline and felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. Mara had wanted me off the wire. She was about to discover what happened when the safety net disappeared completely. The game was about to begin. Clara Hendricks had chosen a restaurant in Covent Garden for our meeting. One of those places where the lighting was deliberately dim and the tables were spaced far enough apart for private conversations. She was already seated when I arrived, a woman in her 40s, with the kind of sharp, predatory look that successful lawyers cultivate like a weapon. Julian, she said, standing to shake my hand. Thank you for coming. Clara. I sat down across from her, noting the way she'd positioned herself with her back to the wall and a clear view of the entrance. Lawyer habits. Mara's worried about you, is she? She says you're not answering her calls, that you've disappeared with some mysterious woman. Clara's smile was professionally sympathetic. She's concerned about your state of mind. My state of mind is fine. Is it? Julian, I've known you for 8 years. This isn't like you. Running off with strangers, ignoring your responsibilities. My responsibilities? I kept my voice level, but something cold was building in my chest. Tell me, Clara, what responsibilities do I have to a wife who cancels my airline tickets and leaves me stranded in foreign airports? Clara's composure flickered slightly. Mara explained that. It was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that happened while she was having dinner with Lucas Brandt at the airport lounge. The flicker became a full pause. Clara reached for her wineglass, buying time. I don't know what you think you know. I know that my wife has been having an affair. I know that she's been using company resources to fund personal trips with her lover. I know that she's been lying to me for months. I leaned forward slightly. The question is, what do you know, Clara? Julian, you're upset. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months. My phone buzzed with a text from Maria. Financial transfers complete. Joint accounts secured. She'll know within the hour. Clara was still talking. Something about marriage counseling and working through difficulties. But I wasn't really listening anymore. I was thinking about the emergency clauses Arya had helped me activate that morning. The pre-signed authorizations that Mara had insisted on for efficiency. The joint accounts that were now secured in escrow pending resolution of our emergency situation. And I think if you just came home and talked to her. Clara, I interrupted. Can I ask you something? Of course. As Mara's lawyer and friend, did you advise her that having an affair with a business partner might create professional complications? Clara's face went very still. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly, did you know about Lucas? Julian. Because if you did know, and you didn't advise her about the potential legal and professional ramifications, that seems like a failure in your duty as her counsel. I smiled, feeling something predatory unfurl in my chest. And if you didn't know, it raises questions about how well you really know your client. Clara set down her wine glass with deliberate care. What do you want, Julian? I want my wife to face the consequences of her choices. And what consequences would those be? My phone rang. Mara. Excuse me, I said to Clara, and answered the call. Hello, Mara. Julian, what the hell have you done? Her voice was tight with panic. I can't access our accounts. The bank says there's some kind of hold emergency financial protection clause, I said calmly. Section 12 of our joint account agreement. You remember? The one you insisted we include for situations where one spouse might be compromised or acting irrationally. Compromised? Julian, you can't. I've been abandoned abroad by my spouse, left without resources or support. That seems to qualify as an emergency situation, requiring financial protection. This is insane. You can't freeze our accounts because you're having a tantrum. I'm not having a tantrum. I'm protecting our joint assets while I assess the full extent of the damage to our marriage. I looked at Clara, who was listening with growing alarm. I'll call you back. I hung up. Clara was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Julian, you can't be serious about this. About what? About protecting myself from a spouse who's demonstrated poor judgment and potential financial irresponsibility? You're talking about Mara like she's some kind of criminal. I'm talking about Mara like she's someone who's been lying to me for months, using our joint resources to fund an extramarital affair, and who abandoned me at an international airport. I signaled the waiter for the check. If she wants access to our accounts restored, she can explain her recent financial decisions to a mediator. Julian, this will destroy her career? Her career? Clara, I've been married to this woman for 8 years. I've supported her through every promotion, every difficult client, every late night at the office. And she repaid that support by fucking her business partner and leaving me stranded in an airport. I stood up. Her career is the least of my concerns right now. Clara grabbed my arm as I started to leave. What do you want? Money? A better divorce settlement? What? I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. I want her to understand that actions have consequences. I want her to realize that the boring, predictable husband she took for granted isn't as powerless as she thought. And then what? And then we'll see how sorry she really is. I left Clara sitting at the table, probably already calling Mara to report that the boring husband had just become a very expensive problem. Outside, Arya was waiting in her Bentley. How did it go? She asked as I got in. Better than expected. Clara's scared. Good. Scared lawyers make mistakes. Arya pulled into traffic with the smooth confidence of someone who'd never worried about parking tickets. Any word from your wife about the accounts? She called during the meeting. She's panicking. Excellent. Phase 1 is complete. Arya's smile was sharp with satisfaction. Ready for Phase 2? What's Phase 2? Tonight's gala. Time to make your public debut as a man with options. As we drove through London, my phone continued to buzz with increasingly frantic calls and messages from Mara. Each one made the cold satisfaction in my chest grow a little stronger. She'd wanted me off the wire. Now she was about to discover what it felt like to fall without a net. The Dorchester Hotel's ballroom was exactly the kind of place where London's financial elite gathered to congratulate themselves on their success while writing tax-deductible checks for charity. Crystal chandeliers cast flattering light over designer gowns and bespoke suits, while waiters in white gloves circulated with champagne that cost more per bottle than most people spend on groceries in a month. Arya looked stunning in a way that seemed effortless, but probably required hours of preparation. Her black dress was elegant without being flashy, expensive without being obvious. She moved through the crowd with the kind of confidence that came from knowing she belonged anywhere she chose to be. "There," she said quietly, nodding toward the far side of the ballroom, "your wife and her lover." Mara was wearing the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. She looked beautiful and desperate, scanning the crowd with the kind of nervous energy that suggested she was looking for someone specific. Lucas stood beside her, tall and bland in his expensive suit, occasionally placing a proprietary hand on her back. "She looks worried," Arya observed. "Good. We made our entrance like we owned the place." Arya's hand rested lightly on my arm as we moved through the crowd, stopping to exchange pleasantries with various financial luminaries. She introduced me as her partner, with just enough ambiguity to make people wonder exactly what kind of partnership she meant. "Julian Kepler," said a man I recognized as the head of one of London's largest investment banks. "Didn't you handle the Morrison audit? Brilliant work, that." "Thank you. And now you're working with Arya? Interesting combination, cybersecurity and real estate." "We find we complement each other well," Arya said smoothly. Across the room, I could see Mara watching us. Her face was a mask of controlled panic. "Excuse me," she said to the group she'd been talking with and started moving in our direction. "Here we go," Arya murmured. Mara approached with the kind of forced smile she used for difficult clients. "Julian, I didn't expect to see you here." "Hello, Mara." I kept my voice neutral, professional. "You remember Arya Venton?" "Of course." Mara's smile tightened. "I didn't realize you two knew each other." "We've become very close very quickly," Arya said, with just enough warmth to make the statement sound intimate. Mara's composure cracked slightly. "Julian, could I speak with you privately?" "I don't think that's necessary. Anything you need to say, you can say here." "Julian, is there a problem?" Lucas had appeared beside Mara, his hand settling possessively on her waist. Up close, he was even more bland than I'd expected. The kind of man whose entire personality could be summed up by his watch and his car. "No problem," I said. "Just saying hello to my wife." Lucas's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're Mara's husband. For now." The tension in our little group was becoming noticeable. Other guests were starting to glance in our direction. "Perhaps," Arya said smoothly, "we should move this conversation somewhere more private." "No," Mara said quickly. "That's not necessary. Julian, I need to talk to you about the accounts. You can't just freeze everything." "I can, and I did." I kept my voice calm, reasonable. Emergency financial protection. You remember the clause. That clause was for genuine emergencies. Being abandoned at Heathrow by my spouse seems pretty genuine to me. Lucas stepped forward slightly. "Look, mate, I don't know what your problem is, but..." "My problem?" I looked at him with genuine curiosity. "My problem is that my wife has been fucking her business partner and using our joint accounts to pay for hotel rooms." "But I suppose that's not really your concern, is it?" The words carried further than I'd intended. Conversations around us began to falter as people turned to see what was happening. Mara's face went white. "Julian, please..." "Please what? Please continue to pretend I don't know? Please keep quiet while you destroy our marriage for someone who can't even afford his own hotel rooms?" "That's enough," Lucas said, his voice tight with anger. "Is it?" I stepped closer to him, noting with satisfaction that he stepped back. "Tell me, Lucas, does your firm know you've been billing personal expenses to client accounts? Because I have some very interesting documentation about your recent expense reports." Lucas went very still. "What are you talking about?" "Hotel charges for business trips that never happened. Restaurant bills for client entertainment on days when no clients were scheduled." I smiled. "Amazing what you can discover when you know where to look." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled through some files Arya had prepared. The Savoy, March 15th, billed to the Henderson account. But Henderson was in New York that entire week. The Langham, April 3rd, billed to Morrison Industries, but Morrison terminated their contract with your firm in February. Lucas's face was losing color. Around us, the crowd was growing larger as more people stopped to listen. Should I continue? I asked. Because I have about 6 months' worth of these irregularities. I'm sure your compliance department would find them fascinating. Julian, Mara said desperately, stop this. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene? I looked around at the crowd of London's financial elite, all watching our little drama with the kind of fascination usually reserved for car accidents. Mara, you canceled my airline ticket and left me stranded at Heathrow while you had dinner with your lover. If anyone's making scenes, it's not me. This is insane, Lucas said, but his voice lacked conviction. What's insane, I said, is thinking you could steal my wife and use fraudulent expense reports to pay for it without anyone noticing. I looked directly at him. What's insane is thinking I was too boring and predictable to fight back. The crowd around us had grown silent. In the world of London finance, reputation was everything. Accusations of expense fraud, extramarital affairs, and professional misconduct were the kind of scandals that ended careers. I think, Arya said quietly, we've said enough for one evening. She was right. The damage was done. Mara looked like she was about to cry. Lucas looked like he was about to be sick. And half of London's financial community had just witnessed their public humiliation. Enjoy the rest of your evening, I said to Mara, then turned to address the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. Please, return to your charitable giving. As we walked away, I could hear the buzz of conversation starting up behind us. By tomorrow, the story would be all over the financial district. Well, Arya said as we reached the exit, that was more dramatic than I expected. Too much? Not at all. Perfect, actually. She smiled as we waited for her car. Your wife wanted excitement, unpredictability. I think you've given her more than she bargained for. My phone was already buzzing with calls from Mara. I turned it off. What's next? I asked. Next, we let the story spread. We let her panic. We let her realize that the boring, predictable husband she took for granted has just become the most dangerous man in her life. As we drove away from the Dorchester, I felt something cold and satisfied settle in my chest. Mara had wanted me off the wire. Now she was about to discover what it felt like when the safety net turned into a trap. The game was far from over.